Well, it sure feels like it's been forever, but I just want to welcome everybody back to Soul Chats with psychic medium Dani Jo. And I'm super excited to have a special guest tonight, a very dear friend, Kathy Curr. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Dani. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. I feel like it's been a while since I've done a podcast. Life is flying by us, but we're going to wait and let a couple people more join us here before I get too involved in some questions. And just want to remind everybody that is watching live on Facebook, if you don't give StreamYard permission to share your name, we may not know who's commenting. But I will watch here on the other screen as well. So welcome to join us. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And I really enjoy the Soul Chats side of things, because the cool thing is that so many people get to hear about people's stories into their spirituality and really what their life involved. And your life and my life have a little bit of resonation, because I was born to work with children, and I feel like you were also born to work with children. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Kathy, who you are and what your life has kind of been involved with.
All right. Well, my name is Kathy Curr, and I live East River in South Dakota. And I was a teacher for 42 years for early elementary. And I retired a few years ago, which I don't recommend. It gets a little long, but I did go back and did some subbing. I do subbing because I need that energy, that kid's energy. And yeah, so that's about where I'm at. This journey started for me, about 5 years ago, as it often does. It's like after a passing, and my mother passed, and then 12 days later, my brother drowned. And so, I could feel myself spiraling. And I started off with a counselor, and then a very dear friend of mine referred me to you, Dani, and that's sort of how my story got started.
Yeah, that's been a while now. Gosh.
3 years. I just looked it up, and it'll be 3 years. Tomorrow I have a session, and it'll be 3 years tomorrow.
Oh, isn't that
That
something?
we've worked every month, so
That's pretty cool.
very cool.
Well, tell me what it was like to work with kids for that many years. I mean, I know that certain jobs have a burnout, right? And to work in that same field for that many years, what did you take away from? I mean, do you miss it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I miss it. I miss it a lot. But I miss the energy of kids. And so I always went into every day just knowing that we'd have energy. Sometimes there was more energy than I wanted, but it was just that energy. And I didn't understand it all. And through this process, I'm starting to understand the energy in kids that are empathic, and some of those meltdowns that we have, and some of those really active kids, the kids that can't handle a lot of energy around them. And I just wish I would have known this, before, because in the last 2 years, I meditated with my kids every afternoon. We took that 10 minutes to meditate. Some children didn't like it, but they had to be quiet for 10 minutes. They didn't have to necessarily listen, but they just had to be quiet. So yeah, so the energy of kids I miss. So now I love subbing because I go in. I'm not responsible for standards and lesson plans and behavior. My goal is to keep the kids engaged, keep them learning, and keep them safe. And I enjoy it.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you can kind of still have your hands in that while, still enjoying retirement and having some time for yourself. So, a lot of people end up finding a medium around the loss of a loved one. And I think that oftentimes will spark someone's spiritual journey or open doors to their spirituality for them. So around that time that, you had a reading with me or reached out, tell me a little bit about like your feelings about that, or maybe your belief system then versus now, and how you handled that.
I've always believed in this, Dani. I've always felt that there was something I've had. And, but, as much as we hate to say it, the industry also has some that maybe aren't as authentic as you are. And so when my friend, when she recommended you, I knew that that's the person I wanted, you were the one, because she had already been there and it just had such relief. And so when I first came to you, I am so surprised that you ever took me back, because I said no, yes, no, yes. I I talk in circles, you know that. I just get to going. I talk with my hands. But when I first went in, the first thing you said to me was, "You are a healer. What you do with that is up to you." And then at the end of the session, you said to me, "You are a healer, and what you do with that is up to you." And in this session, you hit so many things that were spot on. Just so many with my father and my mother, and gave me some real comfort with my brother and his passing and the way he passed.
Yeah.
Um, and so then I had signed up for the membership, and I am still in the membership 3 years later. And it's just something I don't want to give up, because as I progress through this, I have all these questions that I always ask you, and you always, well, let's talk about that. And so, yeah. So when I first came to you, I was excited, because I knew that you were going to give me what I needed. And I had a lot of questions, you know, and you answered them and you stuck with me, even though I was pretty not a real good sitter. I'll just say that. I was not a very good sitter at the first one. So,
Well, spirit gives me all kinds of people and all kinds of sitters. So that's not something that discourages me. But as you well know now, kind of opening up to your own spirituality, a good sitter makes a big difference in your ability to, make the connections and get stronger and go further with things. So I would never turn you away because you're a bad sitter, but I am definitely glad that you've had some opportunity to learn more about that. So, I want to just share with people too that we, have talked a little bit over the years and over the time about young people and their struggles with being very spiritually gifted, and how the, schools, how we wish, things could be different for them in the capacity to meet kids' needs emotionally and spiritually. And I know that in a perfect world, maybe someday that will happen. But I think it's amazing that you did meditation with your kids, and probably, a little bit too, were able to help a few kids that struggled some, just through your own knowledge and teaching them about energy. But tell me, or don't tell me, but tell everyone else a little bit about what you learned about energy healing and how that has kind of played a role in your life, or what you've done with that.
all right. Well, the same friend signed me up for an angel workshop, because she knew that I was very interested in that. And I stayed in there for a couple of years also. But in that process, I became trained as an Angel Reiki Master. And I never have taken Reiki, but it's like stage 1, 2, 3, and then they bring in the angels. And sometimes I have to be careful with that. I always ask if they want angel readings, or because I have some really strong angels that come through to me. Archangel Michael he's here right now. I can feel him. Archangel Gabrielle, she's here. She's with the voice.
Yeah.
Sometimes my voice will change, and I know that that's her helping me through this.
That's right.
And so, that's sort of where we had. So with that, you have children, and yeah, the children. Probably, Danny, the one thing that really convinced me, and without saying too much, at the same time I was starting this process, I had a student that was struggling. And, between a number of us, we really helped her. She was sort of hearing things, and um, it put a whole different aspect on it for me.
Yeah.
I knew that some of the things, and you helped us and gave me some suggestions, and and that just seeing that whole change in that year, it was just it made a big difference, and seeing it in action, seeing all the things that I've been learning. Well, I hadn't really learned it yet, but seeing it in action, everything I believed, I always believed that.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to see it work. Um,
I remember that time, and I know there were a lot of fears and worries and questions and so many things going on for you, but a good learning year, a good learning experience for you to kind of understand some different things about energy and your way to help kids. And yeah, I think it was a good experience, even though during that time it probably felt a little unnerving and trying to
yeah.
learn.
Well, there's a fine line between when you're in the school district
Yeah.
um, and I thought, we handled that very well. So now, after I was trained with this energy healing, um, kids that I really thought that were empathic or or more spiritual, I sort of call their parents and tell them what I'm doing, and usually the parent comes out, and I'll do a session on them, and then the child comes out, but their energy is so pure. It's just so fun. Their energy is like, well, it's just like spirit as a child.
Yes.
It's like the angels are singing, and one time my Archangel Michael was riding a bike doing wheelies, and it is just fun. And so that's sort of where I am with children. So that's my goal. My focus is on kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, for anybody who, had some interest in that, or maybe they live East River and are closer to you, is that something that you offer as a service, or how would they, go about reaching out to you if it was something they wanted to chat with you about?
Well, probably on Messenger, Facebook Messenger right now. Danny, you wear many hats when it comes to me. I needed to get a license in the state, and you helped me walk through that. And, I'm still struggling with the taxes and stuff. So right now, most of mine have been in person. I've had a couple over the internet. I haven't had any children over on Zoom yet. I
Okay.
don't know how that would work. I mean, I think it would work, but I just think having them in the house is better. I did meet one earlier. It happened to be I was 2 hours away from my home, and I was going to be in her town, and I had like 45 minutes. So we met at Culver's, and even though I didn't do the full session, I was able just to talk to the little girl, and
Nice.
there's some real fears, and there's fears that they really don't understand it. I don't understand it, and I didn't start the process till I was 63, and so my life is just starting to make sense to me at
Yeah.
this age. And so if you can help those kids just understand one little bit of it, and just make their life a little easier.
Absolutely. And I think, by you meeting with parents and children, you're also helping these parents who are stuck in a world that they don't understand either. And I think that's a beautiful thing that you're able to help parents understand as well as kids. The kids are probably the easier of the two to work with because kids are so darn open. But I think it's a blessing that you're out there being able to help people and I can't wait to see where that takes you. I know that you've gone down a few different paths. Are you still doing any podcasts? I know that was something you had done for a little while.
I did do a couple of children's podcasts, but what I found out is if you're, on the podcast, Apple and whatever, that you need followers. And so I'm not a real good, I don't do a lot with social media, as you know.
Yeah.
So we just put that on the back burner. And I think there's a need, and I really believe that parents are looking for something.
Yeah.
I know as an educator, I have told you this story about 30 years ago. I went to an angel workshop with Doreen Virtue, and everything she was saying, I agreed with. I agreed that, kids, they're sensitive, and I learned a lot from that, but there's just not a lot of information out there. Now there's books out there and there are some other things, but I would search and look and try to find something just to help make kids come into school, make their day a little easier, make them sort of understand their feelings, make them, aware of that it's okay and they're okay. And just, try to make their life a little easier for that particular day or moment or whatever.
I think there's such a need for that. I would love to, and I know it could potentially happen, see you traveling and talking to schools and educators about this kind of stuff. And if it's meant to be, it'll come together. But I think there's a great need for that. And same with the podcast. If it's something that's supposed to continue for you, it'll pop back up and there will be momentum with it. But I think in whatever capacity you're supposed to help parents and children, that's what you're doing, and you're trusting that. And one of the biggest things I have to tell anybody who's watching, when we come to a spiritual path and we have a lot of belief systems, or our family has a lot of belief systems, whether it be religion or just other things that kind of cloud our mind and judgment. Sometimes it's hard to follow that path because we don't know what everyone's going to think or how people are going to respond, whether it be coworkers or family and whatnot. And, just to see you embrace your own path and not really let the fears hold you back has been a beautiful thing for me to witness. And that's probably my favorite part of being involved in anyone's life, is just seeing their progress and putting the fears behind you. So truly, just on a personal level, I'm proud of you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, because I know firsthand how hard that can be to overcome. But speaking on that note, though, how has your family embraced this side of things?
Well, my husband's very supportive. I'll go back a little bit, Dani, that, I was a child of 6, and I didn't feel like I ever belonged anywhere. And I really resonated with my mom and my one brother, but I just never thought I was ever good enough or I didn't deserve things. All my life I felt that. And so my husband is very supportive, but he's always felt it. He's always had that. Some call it having the oneness. I call it sort of being in the zone, but actually it's being full of spirit. It's being that higher self. And I never had that. And I never had it. Actually, Dani, you're the one that sort of, every time I would be frustrated, you'd say, well, read this book or try this, or, and in one of the books, I could never get that high feeling. And they said, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and it either activates or deactivates the vagus nerve. And I'm not sure which one it does. But all of a sudden, I just felt this, but I was old. I was 63, and I'd never felt that. My husband feels that all the time. He goes out and rides, and he has that inner peace. So he didn't really quite get it when I started this whole process, because he sort of lived it. And my kids are very supportive. They're probably not as, they don't go as far as I do. but they both have their own belief systems, and they're like, they texted, you'll be good, you'll be fine. And so they're supportive. But, my friend, my shout out to Rita, she's just my cheerleader. She's the one that hooked me up with you. She hooked me up with this other class I've been in. She's the one that sends people to me. They'll call me and say, Kathy, I didn't know you do this. Can I come out to your house? Absolutely. Or she'll call people and say, I'll go with you, because, and she's the one that just believes so hard. Like Dani, I didn't know my hands heated up.
Yeah.
And one day she had a sore wrist and she said, put your hands on it. And I'm like, that probably is not going to work. But it did. I got hot, like really hot. And she could feel it. And then she said, put one on the bottom, one on the top. And we could feel that going right through my hands. I could feel it going from hand to hand. So a lot of this has been experimentation, but I have my cheerleader in my corner. Rita's my cheerleader.
Yeah.
And I do a lot with her, and so it's been a real awakening for me. They call that awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
And it really has been. That I have learned so much about myself. And I've changed. People say, I don't know what's happened, but you're different. And I am different. I have that inner peace that I feel it now. And I never felt it before. And so that for me is just huge.
I absolutely think it's just a blessing. And, you talk about, not coming to this until in your 60s. And there's some people who never get there, right? So I always tell people it's never too late and you're never too old to have a new beginning. And, your spiritual development and wherever that's going to take you is a real big part of why we're here. And so to finally get there and really kind of see things click is awesome. Speaking of Rita, she said, so many kids feel this way and have ADHD and space off. Talk about when you sat in school and looked out the window.
Oh, that's what she's asking me.
Yeah.
That you helped me with that too. I have attention deficit, But Dani, you're really the one that walked me through a lot of that. When I was younger, I would first and second grade, and I was in a parochial school, and I'd stare out the window because I didn't understand what she was saying, nor was I interested in what she was saying. And I'd look out the window and I would see visions of things, and I thought it was my imagination. I have huge imagination. And as it happened, I was on a buffalo hunt, and I was a young boy, native boy, and I could see myself. And every day there would be different scenarios, and I just thought it was my imagination running with me. And then the more we talked about it, some very possibly could have been a past life at some point.
Absolutely.
And once I learned that, it's like, so all of those things that I've been imagining all those years. Like in our parochial school, we had a picture of a guardian angel with real turbulent water, and she had a child on the shoulder. And when I was in my early elementary, I just knew that was me. I knew that was me being walked across that water. I just know it. I have this knowing, just that, I just have a knowing, and I just always thought it was a vivid imagination, but I'm going back to my life and figuring out different things.
Yeah. I think that spacing out and visualizing things, what people think is imagination, is quite common with very spiritually open children. I don't know if I've told you this before, but my dad was from Utah and we lived in Las Vegas. So we would drive to Utah at least twice a year for hunting. And I remember just sitting in the vehicle, staring out, looking at houses with all these imagination things going on in my head that I could see what was going on in those homes. And remember thinking also the same thing for me, that my imagination was just really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. It was that psychic ability to tap into the energy of those places and what had gone on there. So for anybody whose kids seem like they have a vivid imagination, they're so spiritually gifted. and they, we don't have the resources to teach them about that. Parents don't know how to help with that. I have 2 questions for you. Deb S. asked where you are located, if you're comfortable sharing that.
Yeah, I'm located in Huron, here in South Dakota. It's just 2 hours from Pierre, 2 hours from Sioux Falls, right in the middle of the eastern South Dakota.
Perfect. And then she also asked, can you help children that have ADHD?
I can. I can't say that everybody, all kids that have ADHD. I still believe that, you do need to go through your physician.
Yeah.
And you do need to go, and some kids obviously will need some type of medicine. But once you understand what they're going through, it's amazing. It's amazing how much can be done with maybe not a lot of medication. But as a teacher, I've seen that throughout my whole career. And myself, I have it. I know that. There are just certain things you can do that helps. And I think one of them, Dani, is validating. And I know I've had 28 kids and they're all coming up to you at once. And it's difficult sometimes, but just validating that, yes, I understand that's what's happening. If you need a 5-minute break, take one. If you need a 10-minute break, take one. If you need to, whatever you need, you can do. I wish I would have known about the grounding and the shielding and the protection. I've learned that in a book by Pat Longo about, the whole book is about children with anxiety and kids that are afraid in crowds. And
Yeah.
actually a lot of it is, as an adult, I'm not real fond of crowds, but so yes, I can't say I can fix it because I don't think we're broken. I think it's who we are. But I also do know that there is a time and a place for medication also,
Yeah.
But yeah, we can definitely talk about it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, just on my own knowledge of like healing work, some of what you do as far as like Reiki and doing the work with angels and whatnot can give people also insights into, their own struggles and helping them learn how to ground and balance and whatnot. So, yeah, I definitely think Kathy can make a difference, whether it be bringing knowledge to the situation or helping ground and clear. But, yeah, so she's in here on, if anybody wants to reach out to her, you can find her on Facebook, or you can always reach out through me and I can make a contact too. So for anybody else that's kind of watching, if you have any questions for Kathy, feel free to put them. She had one more comment here. She said he has been on meds for years, but he talks a lot of spacing out. So yeah, that, depending on the age of the child or the person, there's a lot of things probably that are factors there.
Yes. Some of that spacing out actually, Dani, can be, he's like in a different realm, but you have to be careful when you talk to certain people because, they get in that big, I don't want to, they just think that there's other things wrong besides this spiritual.
Yeah. So I'll comment to that, my own situation. So before I knew I was a medium, I went to Mayo Clinic for several years. And one of the things that I had going on were like what they were trying to diagnose as like absence seizures. So they were like moments of spacing out and not being really with it or coherent. And that, in the end, I wasn't actually having seizure activity. I was having spiritual moments. Yes. And so just being able to speak to that in my own situation, I know that there's a fine line there. You always want to doctor and make sure your body is healthy, but a lot of it can be spiritual, and everything for me was spiritual. There was no autoimmune disorder. There was no seizure disorder. There was no heart disease. I was just simply being connected to spirit. And thankfully that's the case for me, but it isn't always for everyone. But yes, that definitely can be, a connection to spirit. And I think sometimes people just need to learn, there's so much that you can do through meditation and learning to quiet the mind and be in that space of inner peace. And, you having ADHD, you still achieve meditation.
It took me a while, but once I learned, yeah. And now I can go into that high vibration just like I'm in it now. I mean, because I think about it, and I meditated again to one of your meditations, and yeah, I like that. But I was going to say that also too, Dani. I think if parents would put on like an hour meditation and with their children before they go to bed, I think they would see an enormous difference because our kids like right now they have so many decisions to make, and school is difficult. And if you're not an academic person, which many aren't, they would rather work with their hands, or if you don't learn the way they think you do, it can be very stressful. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I noticed is the anxiety of children as my years went on. There's so many things that they have to do and that are required and expected. And I just know that sometimes anxiety does play a huge role. And
Absolutely.
by calming the mind and just listening to the meditations at night, just, lay in bed with them for 5 minutes and have them listen to that for however, you can find them on YouTube, but you can get those hour where they're just peaceful. They're not guided meditations. They're just calming meditations. And but that would help immensely, and especially with ADHD kids.
Yeah. When I opened my store in Belfouche, the first location we had for Sacred Soul, I did kids club for a little while. So kids could come once a week and we had meditation and we had talking time, and just, it was a great experience. But one of my advertisements for that was a meme or an image of a child meditating that said, if we could teach every 8-year-old to meditate, we could change the world.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that was one statement that is accurate. We could change this entire world if we taught every child to meditate. But someday it'll be a priority, I hope. I hope there's more teachers like you out there bringing meditation into their classrooms. But meditation is life-changing for everyone.
Yes, it
if they
is.
stick with it.
And there's scientific evidence. I've read books, by doctors that have done the MRIs and the EKG or the EEGs and all of that. It is scientific. There's a science behind it now. So it's not just like woo-woo, that people out there are thinking it, but there is documentation of science behind it.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of people that need that. Yeah. The problem is that, you sort of go on a swing, and social and emotional was really prevalent in our schools. And then somebody decided we couldn't do it because it wasn't teaching them for the future, which, is so not correct. It's teaching them to be better workers and students and just inner peace. And so they're trying to bring it back in. And if now again, but there is a swing that they don't teach it. And if we don't teach kids to deal with our emotions, yeah, things will grow up not so good.
Yeah, no, I agree. Rita said sometimes the kids just need to know that it is okay and that they are normal. Just telling kids that they can stop taking on worries of others by giving them a switch can really help empathetic children. Some kids take on the stress of all in their class.
Yeah. and they can feel all of it.
Yes.
When I was working with that student, we had something outside the door, and it was stop. All your worries stay outside the door, and the only worries we have are things that are in here. But it is really hard for 8-year-olds to know how to do that. It's hard for 68-year-olds to know how to do that. You hear something and it just engulfs you with pain that, it's not your pain, but you don't know how to get rid of it. I think I told you I had sore throats and headaches and stomach, chest pains for years, and it wasn't my pain.
Mhm.
My dad passed of emphysema. My mother had COPD, and then, and once I knew that it wasn't my pain I was holding all those years, it's gone. In fact, a funny story, Danny, I had this pain in my lower back, in my kidney area. And so I was tested for kidney infection, and I went over to my friend Rita's, and we did a meditation. It happened to be yours on healing the body. And Rita said, let's just try this one, 10-minute. And I went home that night, and the next day the pain was gone, and I haven't had it back. We can say it's a coincidence, but it had been there for 3 weeks, a nagging pain, and I wasn't sure what it was, and it is gone. And
That's
you know
something.
what? Yeah, you think that that's just a coincidence. I don't think it is, and I know it isn't anymore.
Yeah, that's
You know,
amazing.
yeah, it was pretty good. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. I love hearing stuff like that. I I think that kids are so fun to work with, and the time we're living in right now, everybody that's young is coming into the world a spiritually gifted soul, and
Mhm.
they're struggling so much because they don't have what they need to develop that and understand it. But as more and more of us are awakening and working with kids and trying to spread that awareness, hopefully that will become more of the norm and whatnot. I it keeps popping into my head to bring this up. I don't remember you talking about going to a workshop with Doreen Virtue, but it keeps coming into my mind how jealous I am that you got the opportunity to
I
do.
did, and it was amazing. The
Oh, I
workshop was amazing. It was a 2-day, which I don't do well in workshops, but that was 20, 30 years ago, and she had just started, but it did bring a lot of things into light for me.
yeah.
And they talked, but they talked about the crystal children, the rainbow and the indigo, and now they're just saying, you know what? Most kids have it.
Hmm.
They're born, some are more developed than others. But Danny, you see it, I see it. When I would go into a classroom, I would look and say, "Oh, this little guy's got such an old soul. I can
Hmm.
feel it," and sometimes I always laughed and said I'd stand beside him because they were wise beyond their years. They
Yes.
had so much wisdom, and I was hoping some of that would wear off on me, or they had such inner peace about them. They were so calm, and my mother used to say that all the time, an old soul. And so I always think of that. We did it for years. I just wish we could do it more for classrooms and
Absolutely.
parents too, but I think there's a huge need for teachers. I just and many teachers are looking for things, and something, it takes a lot of research. Let's just say that. There's a lot more now than there ever has been, but
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the times are changing and they'll continue to go in the right direction, we hope. And, over time, maybe not in our lifetime, but maybe in the next generation, the kids will have what they need in that capacity. But my big hope, and I think I've told you this, was when we hit COVID, that was going to kind of change things up for schools and for kids, and that there would be newer and different opportunities. And there was for a little while, but of course, everything gets put back to normal when everything gets back to normal. So, but we'll keep our hope that, things will keep changing for kids to have what they need at those opportunities at school. But I just want to thank you for all the work that you do with kids and your beautiful, beautiful soul that is kind and loving to people that need you. And I'm just super grateful to have you in my circle and the ability to kind of send people your way if they can find you. And
Mhm.
I just thank you for that. And thanks for the work you do.
Well, thank you. It started, you sort of got me on the journey by telling me, do what you want with it, do what you want with it. And, I had lots of questions and you always said, let's talk about that. Because, I sort of knew the answer, but I just needed validation.
I think that's what most people need is deep down, your gut knows, but it's feels better when someone validates for us or confirms for us what we feel. And that's a lot of spiritual guidance is just confirming what you already know. But
Yeah.
Rhonda said, thank you for this information. So thank you for sharing all your guidance. And
Well,
again, I just really thank you for all you do for kids. And again, if anybody wants to reach out to Kathy, she's in the Huron area. Find her on Facebook, Kathy Curr, Curr.
mhm,
And otherwise, you can always reach out through me. So,
right.
um,
Or if you want to reach out through Rita, she'll get you to me because she's my cheerleader.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Rita's a resource also. But Kathy, thank you so much for being a guest tonight. It was such a pleasure to chat with you.
thank you, Danny, as always. One of the highlights of my month is knowing that I get to talk to you for an hour.
Well, I appreciate you. And yes, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the support. And we'll see you next time on another episode of Soul Chats.
Thanks, Danny.